Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
Let me begin this week with an update. The update is about the book. And if you've listened before, you know what book I'm talking about. It is A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty. The audiobook is complete. The ebook is complete. The physical book is complete. The publication date is September 15th. So just over 2 weeks. So about 2.5 weeks away from the publication. And if you listen, then you know that I did a crowdfunder or a crowdsourcing fundraiser thing to help raise some funds to help me be able to, get the book a little bit more publicity than I otherwise would have, and also to hopefully, be able to allow me to reduce the cost of the book, which I have done, and allow, hopefully, the book to wind up getting into the hands of more people. So what I have done is, so far I've entered 3 book award competitions, and there's a 4th that I will enter. And the only reason that I've not yet paid that entry fee is because there's still several months until the deadline. I had one of those, brain misfires, and I could not think of the word deadline. So some of the other book award competitions, a couple of the ones that I already entered, there were early bird specials to where if I entered by a certain time, then I saved like $20 off of the entry fee. So I found it expeditious to go ahead and enter those competitions, and I will be getting the copies of the book sent out to the award people after the book is published. And if you ordered copies of the book during the crowdfunder, then the copy will be sent to you after publication. If you got in with your perks a copy of the ebook or the audiobook, then that will be sent to you on Tuesday. And there's a reason that I have not already sent it. And the reason primarily is because I want to make you wait. No, the reason is that I wanted to make sure that everything was completely in order so that I actually could wind up going ahead with the September 15th publication date, which is the date that I set several weeks ago. But there's a lot of behind-the-scenes sort of things that need to be done. And one of those things was the ebook formatting. And there's also going to be, and I've never done this before, so this is like uncharted territory for me. There's actually going to be a physical CD version of the audiobook. And the CD version is going to be mildly abridged just because the way the CDs work, you can only have 79 minutes of audio on a disc. Well, the audio book is about 84 minutes long. So I had to wind up cutting a few minutes of time out of the book, and that took me some time to go through and figure out what I could cut and where, and some of the stuff I sped up the audio just a little bit. So you can't really tell that it's sped up because it's, so slight of a speed up, but I still had to make some cuts here and there. So that is done, that's ready, and I actually have a physical copy. And if you would like that, I'm going to do sort of a contest here. So if you want the physical copy of the CD and you were part of the crowdfunder, so you donated any amount, doesn't matter what the amount was, just send a tweet, #freebook, #A Rebel's Journey. So just send out that tweet, and I will select somebody that sends out a tweet, including the #freebook and #A Rebel's Journey. all one word on A Rebel's Journey, no commas or anything. So A Rebel's Journey, Rebels as plural. And the reason it has to be plural is because, like, punctuation screws up hashtags on Twitter. So send that out on Twitter. I will select somebody that sends that tweet, and I'll announce the winner of that on Wednesday during the Ask Me Anything. And one other announcement, actually two other announcements, but they're sort of intertwined and interrelated. So I was going through and made a few small minor changes to the website, fppradio.com. And it's not really going to be anything major. You might not even notice the changes, which is great because, like, that's how changes should be, right? To where, like, they're so minute and minimal that people don't really realize that things changed. And then all of a sudden, like a while later, they're like, hey, didn't this used to look a little different? So some of the links of ways that you can listen to the various shows that I do, that has been moved around a little bit on the page. And like I say, you might not even notice that there was a change. So there's that. And then speaking of changes, I'm thinking of making a change to the way I do the fans program. So the fans program, that's friends, allies, and Numery supporters. So people that donate to the show and help offset the cost of web hosting and hosting archives and a couple other things. So what I'm thinking of doing is, instead of having it set up right now through PayPal, is switching it over and running it through something called Patreon, where I've heard several people talk about Patreon. They have their sort of, similar programs running through Patreon, and it's a similar sort of thing. So I'm still going to call it the fans program. It will just run through Patreon. There's a couple of things that I need to do before I get that completely kicked off. But what I'm hoping to do with that, and I'll put out a YouTube video because that's something that Patreon says that you should do. Like, you should put out a video explaining to people what you're doing. So I'll explain it here, and then I'll shoot a video sometime this weekend, hopefully, and get that posted and then activate the Patreon. So what I'm hoping to do is, you know that I've been doing a daily 5-minute newscast all 7 days of the week. Well, what I'm hoping to do is update that a couple of times throughout the day. And what I would really be doing on that, in addition to updating the commodity prices that I give at the beginning of the newscast, is I would be, finding a couple of different news stories and basically having 3 versions of the newscast. So it would not just be like, here's the newscast and I'm updating commodity prices, but the news stories are still the same. And so I'm hoping to do that. Somebody had asked me a while back, what is the number that you would need to be able to do this? And I said $500. Well, nobody's come through with that amount of money, so I'm hoping to raise that through the fans program. I'll have, like I said, I'll have a video up in a couple of days. I'll talk more about this on Monday. But when we come back, I want to talk to you about something that the FBI is doing, and it's got some people not exactly happy. I'll tell you exactly what.
Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's FANS.fppradio.com. In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake's security company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
So what has the FBI done that has really annoyed some people and caused them to sue the FBI? Well, okay, yes, there are a bunch of people that aren't happy with things that the FBI has done, and yes, there are several groups that have sued the FBI, not the least of which is antiwar.com, an organization that I actually donate to every month. And if you have some extra funds that you're thinking of, trying to donate somewhere, obviously I'm going to suggest that you join the fans program. But if you want an anti-war group that you can donate to, you could always donate to antiwar.com. And antiwar.com has a lawsuit against the FBI over some unfair and possibly unlawful surveillance. But there's another group, and this is a group of journalists that are suing the FBI. This is the Associated Press. You've probably heard of them. The AP. They are one of the largest news agencies in the U.S., if not in the world. The Associated Press filed a lawsuit against the FBI yesterday, demanding that the FBI hand over information about its use of fake news stories. The case stems from a 2007 incident regarding a bomb threat at a school. The FBI created a fake news story with an Associated Press byline, then emailed the story to a suspect in order to plant malware on his computer. The Associated Press filed a Freedom of Information Act request to the FBI last year seeking documents related to the sting. They also asked how many times the FBI had used such a ruse since 2000. The FBI responded to the AP saying that it could take 2 years or more to gather the information. Unsatisfied with the response, the AP has taken the matter to court. A different FOIA request by the Electronic Frontier Foundation on a different matter revealed the strategy in 2011, but it was not made public until last year when privacy researcher Chris Sogain, I hope I'm pronouncing that name right, when Sogain saw evidence of the operation in the documents and tweeted about it. That spurred both the AP and the Seattle Times to complain vocally about the FBI's behavior. AP General Counsel Karen Kaiser wrote in a letter to then Attorney General Eric Holder, quote, "The FBI both misappropriated the trusted name of the Associated Press and created a situation where our credibility could have been undermined on a large scale." FBI Director James Comey defended the action in a New York Times op-ed, writing, "We do use deception at times to catch crooks, but we are acting responsibly and legally." The op-ed, or rather in the op-ed, Comey admitted that not only did the FBI create a fake news story, one of its agents impersonated an AP journalist. Now, you know what it's called when you or I impersonate someone in order to, get them to do something illegal. Yet that's called breaking the law. And if somebody from the FBI impersonated someone from the FBI, or if somebody from the AP impersonated somebody from the FBI, that would be impersonating a law enforcement officer, which I believe is a felony. But if you just impersonate somebody else, then that's still some kind of crime. But I want to touch on something that James Comey wrote in his letter or his op-ed in the New York Times. He said, "We are acting responsibly and legally." Now, I will debate whether or not he was acting responsibly, or whether or not the FBI agent that made the fake AP News article was acting responsibly. Now, legally, that it could, in theory, be debated whether or not what they did was legal, but I'm guessing that it was, and here's the reason why I think it was. Because pretty much every law that applies to me and you and everybody else, yet they're exempted from those. There's, I forget what the law is in New Hampshire. There's actually several. Possession of metallic knuckles is one that is rather strange. It's a very odd statute. It is perfectly legal to possess brass knuckles in New Hampshire if you have a valid fishing or hunting license and you are in the act of fishing or hunting. It's also legal to possess metallic knuckles if you are a law enforcement officer. So I think the reason some of these things they have exempted themselves, that way they don't get arrested carrying the evidence after they arrest somebody. So, like that kind of makes sense to some degree. Kind of. It doesn't make sense in the fact that they're completely blanketed exempt from any of these things. But, the whole thing of, somebody has to carry this to the evidence locker, and I don't want, my guy getting arrested while he takes it to the evidence locker. So that, on that hand, it makes sense. But the blanket exemption does not make sense at all. There are also exemptions in the drug possession statutes to where police are allowed to possess while on duty in the performance of their job. Now, what some police officers wind up doing with what they possess is they wind up planting it on people, and then they say, well, see, this person had drugs. Aren't you glad we stopped them? Because they're a horrible person. Even though they didn't have drugs until you planted it on their person, and you were allowed to carry it on you because you're exempted from the statute. So when James Comey says that what the FBI did was legal, he is most likely telling the truth. The story here continues. It says the FBI emailed the fake news story via a link to a suspect's MySpace account. The email was made to look like it came from the Seattle Times. When the suspect clicked on the link, the FBI software revealed his location and IP address to agents working the case. A juvenile suspect was arrested on June 14th, 2007. A month later, the student was sentenced to 90 days juvenile probation and ordered to pay $8,852 to compensate for the school's additional security. The Associated Press filed the lawsuit together with the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, which put in its own Freedom of Information Act request last year. The lawsuit notes that it has been nearly 300 days since the original request was made, and says the FBI has failed to respond to the request as it is legally required to do. And that is something that really annoys me, is the whole Freedom of Information Act request thing. Not that people have a freedom to request information. I love that part. What annoys me is the way the FOIA is carried out by the agencies. So when you ask the questions, you can't just ask a question. You have to say, I would like all documents related to, and then fill in the blank of whatever it is that you want documents related to. So you can't ask the question, which one of your police officers did fill in the blank? You have to say, all documents related to any officer that did fill in the blank. And then you have to hope that they actually wind up giving you what they have. And there have been times I've filed FOIAs and gotten, we don't have anything, when I know it's a blatant lie.
The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. The liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Liberty.me. Liberty.me. That is a website that you definitely need to check out. If you are not an internet troll and you want all of the best parts of the internet that are all on one website. So what do I mean, all the best parts of the internet all on one website? Well, Liberty.me is kind of like a social network. It's kind of like a WordPress blog. It's kind of like a chat room. It's kind of like a forum. But it's got all of those things in one place. So there is the social networking aspect where you can share links, join groups, chat with people using chat rooms. There's also forums that you can participate in. There's the publishing side where you can have your own blog as part of your Liberty.me account. You can read ebooks, and you can do so much more at Liberty.me. And if you use referral code FPP Radio, you will save 10% off of the monthly subscription fee. And why do I say that you should check out Liberty.me if you're not an internet troll? Well, because that's one thing that I've not found on Liberty.me is internet trolls. And that's because internet trolls don't want to have to pay to be an internet troll. They want to go to the free sites and the places where they don't have to pay and they can be very anonymous. And yeah, you could have like a fake name on Liberty.me. But why would you want to when you're around like-minded people in a wonderful social networking site? So check it out, Liberty.me, referral code FPP Radio. Now, I was talking about how the FBI manipulates things, and like a lot of times, and this is not something that I spoke about earlier in the show, but it's something that I'm sure you're familiar with if you've paid attention to the FBI and some of these terrorist arrests that have happened over the last decade or so. A lot of times what will happen is the FBI will find some unsuspecting delinquent and coax them into planning out a terrorist attack. And I'm using air quotes there because most of the time they being the FBI, will put the idea into the mind of this particular person and then help them build the bomb. Most of the time, it's not a real working bomb. Every now and then, they will actually give the person some real explosives. And then, like at the date and the time that's set up for, okay, you're going to go blow up the Christmas tree lighting in Eugene, Oregon, the FBI rolls up on the scene as the terrorist, the quote-unquote terrorist, shows up with the bomb that was supplied by the FBI. And then they say, aren't you glad we were here to arrest this person? yeah, I'm so glad you arrested the person that you gave this bomb to and told him to come here. Like, I'm so very happy that that's happening. So that's definitely FBI manipulating people. And, well, there's some research that says that Google may actually be manipulating people's political leanings. And they might be doing it without intending to do so. The story comes from Politico, and the author of the story actually did some research. And he figured out how Google is doing this, whether intentionally or not. But before he gets into the research, let me sort of begin. Well, I'll just begin with the story. He says America's next president could be eased into office not just by TV ads or speeches, but by Google's secret decisions, and no one except for me and perhaps a few other obscure researchers would know how this was accomplished. Research I have been directing in recent years suggests that Google has amassed far more power to control elections, indeed to control a wide variety of opinions and beliefs, than any company in history ever has. Google's search algorithm can easily shift the voting preference of undecided voters by more than 20% and up to 80% in some demographics, with virtually no one knowing that they are being manipulated, according to experiments I recently conducted with Ronald E. Robertson. The author of this article is Robert Epstein, by the way. He says, given that many elections are won by small margins, this gives Google the power right now to flip upwards of 25% of national elections worldwide. That means up to 1/4 of all national elections that happen anywhere on the globe, Google could either intentionally or inadvertently change the outcome of 25% of those elections. In the United States, he writes, half of our presidential elections have been won by margins under 7.6%, and in 2012, the election was won by a margin of only 3.9%, well within Google's control. There are at least 3 very real scenarios whereby Google, perhaps even without their leaders' knowledge, could shape or even decide the next election. Whether or not Google execs see it this way, the employees who constantly adjust the search giant's algorithms are manipulating people every minute of every day. The adjustments they make increasingly influence our thinking, including, it turns out, our voting preferences. And then he goes into talking about what's called search engine manipulation effect. And they did a study. And let me scroll down and talk about the study that they did. He says, in our basic experiment, participants were randomly assigned to one of 3 groups in which search rankings favored either candidate A, candidate B, or neither of the candidates. Participants were given brief descriptions of each candidate and then asked how much they liked and trusted each candidate and which one they would vote for. Then they were allowed up to 15 minutes to conduct online research on the candidates using a Google-like search engine created by the researchers called Cadoodle. Each group had access to the same 30 search results, all real results linking to real web pages from a past election. The only thing that differed was the way in which the results were listed. So the ranking of the results. People could click freely on any result or shift between any of the 5 different result pages, just as you can do on Google's search engine. The author here writes, when our participants were done searching, we asked them the questions again. And voila, on all measures, opinions shifted in the direction of the candidate who was favored in the rankings. Trust, likability, and voting preference all shifted predictably. And there's actually real-life examples of this. He says, more alarmingly, we also demonstrated this shift with real voters during an actual electoral campaign in an experiment conducted on more than 2,000 eligible undecided voters throughout India in the 2014 Lok Sabha election there. And yes, they were able to, through search results, shift up to 60% of undecided voters. Don't forget, every Wednesdays we Ask Me Anything. Send those questions to AMA@FPPradio.com.